It's truly my honor tonight to introduce him here today, the heart of St. Matthew's House, Vann Ellison.
Well, one of the hardest things in the world to do is follow Tyrone. But, reality is St. Matthew's House was started in this community back in the late 1980s because people impressed that God had called them to care for the least of these on our streets. It's easy to read a news story, to see somebody homeless or disheveled or begging on the side of the road and drive past and not care. Yet the reality is, in the late 80s, the same passage that inspires us and motivates us every day is in Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 46, where Jesus talked about caring for the least of these. He said, when you've fed the hungry, when you've clothed the naked, when you've provided a drink to the thirsty, when you've taken the homeless in, when you've cared for the sick and visited those in jail, you've done it unto me. And so they were motivated that there were people on our streets who had no hope, who had no answers, and we could do better as a community and as a people. So they formed together, and today St. Matthew's House has grown from that humble beginning of a little soup kitchen with 18 beds for men to now having about 170 shelter beds, having 150 or so people in our Justin's Place program, having Wolf Apartments as transitional housing. If you're not from code enforcement in Hendry County, we have a beautiful facility there as well. If you are, never mind. But the reality is, we had a significant donor I was meeting with a few weeks ago, and he was giving me some criticism about some of our organization. Well, you need to be more effective in this. You need to be the. Finally, I just looked at him and I said, do you know why you give to St. Matthew's House? And he said, why? He had that cynical look in his eye, and he said, you give to us because we love drunks until they're better. Because God called us to set people free. And that man started crying because that's the truth. That God doesn't look upon the broken people in our community and say they're of no value. He looks at Tyrone, a man from Mobile, Alabama, who had multiple charges and prison sentences, and said, your life is valuable and you're precious. So St. Matthew's House today is not about the numbers of people in a bed. It's not just about success rates. It's about the reality that God has called us to take in people not as statistics or not as patients, but we take them in as brothers and sisters, as sons and daughters, and as dear friends. And it's such a blessing that over the years now St. Matthew's House has grown to the point where last year we realized since Thanksgiving of '88 we hadn't missed a day of serving homeless on the streets of Collier County. And last year that totaled up to 444,000 meals given to the hungry in our community. We had 1,555 people in our care, people who sought shelter, people who found recovery and found healing, found the grace of God in a powerful way. Of those 155 people, there were 150 kids that were accompanied by their parents. We've seen for the first time in our history, we had our waiting list for women and children longer than our waiting list for single men. Because the depth of poverty doesn't just affect a guy with a drug problem. It affects their kids, it affects single moms, it affects people who are broken by all kinds of things, but the common denominator is that they don't have anybody that cares. They don't have a bank account to fall back on or a credit card to charge something up. And so we've become the family of last resort. Tonight, and I'm a father of teenage boys. I have 4 teenage boys. And one of the reasons that my kids love me so much is that I have a paycheck and they have great desires to spend my money. And, but in spite of that, I love them. And because we take in sons and daughters and brothers and sisters, part of what we do tonight is share with you the message that God has called us to this plan and this purpose of revealing His grace and His mercy in a community. And y'all get to act like Dad, and I'll hit you up for some money in a little bit. But right now, we'd like to show you a video telling about the sons and daughters God's given me.